When technology advances, it either gets smaller or more powerful. The first computer took up 1,800 square foot and weighed 30 tons. And now we have supercomputers that fit in our pockets. The same applies to cameras. Early cameras were massive, some even requiring an entire train to move them. Over time they became smaller and smaller until they could fit around our necks. When digital arrived, this progress didn't stop. Eventually, technology that was once reserved for larger and more professional bodies found its way into smaller and more compact systems. What happens when you cram a highly celebrated 60 megapixel full frame sensor into a small rangefinder style body? If you've seen any of my other videos, you've probably heard me glazing the Sony A7CR. It gives you images with enough detail for a billboard in a package that is small and discreet. I've had this camera for over a year now, so I've had plenty of time to test it on professional shoots as well as in my own daily life. And daily life was the main reason I bought this camera. And the original reason that I got into filmmaking and photography was because I enjoyed it. But as I transitioned into doing this for work, the tools became larger and larger, and so I simply just stopped carrying them everywhere. What I wanted was a small camera that I could use and carry in my daily life, but it was also incredibly capable so that I could use it for my actual work. It features the same 60 megapixel full frame sensor from the Sony A7R5. Everything that you can say about that sensor has already been said. Huge resolution, raw files with seemingly endless dynamic range and color depth. Sony has historically always been labelled as a brand that have amazing technology but bad colours. I'm obsessed with colour, so I've spent years chasing around different camera systems, all in the name of colour science. Canon, Sony, Fuji, Lumix, I've had them all, I've tried them all. Unless you're baking your colours in camera, colour science does not matter. You can make your raw files from one camera look identical to the files from another. All modern cameras that can shoot raw photos and 10-bit 422 video will give you amazing colour. Now, this is a photo first camera. I bought it with the idea of it being my main photo camera while I own a Blackmagic Pixis for all of my video work. But it being a Sony, it still has incredible video performance. Other than my films, I use the A7CR to shoot 95% of the content of these videos. And that's because the files that come out of this thing are a fraction of the size of the raw video you get out of the Pixis, and the image is still 90% as good as a designated cinema camera. I've used it as a B camera before with the Pixis, and the images have cut together really well. It's obviously not very good for long takes and interviews because there's no built-in thermals. I took this camera with me on holiday to America, and it was the sole camera that I used to capture the entire trip, both photos and videos, and I'm really pleased with what this camera delivered. Now, as is normal with S-Log3, if you want the cleanest results, I would always recommend slightly overexposing your footage. Otherwise, the image out of this camera gets very noisy very quickly, and it's a pretty ugly and blocky noise pattern. For example, I'm shooting this talking head setup 1.5 to 2 stops overexposed, but that's because all the lighting here is very controlled. But when you're shooting run and gun, you don't typically have the same luxuries that I do right now. But if you want the cleanest possible image out of this camera, so you kind of have to rely on the denoiser in DaVinci Resolve. Due to the high resolution of the sensor, you're able to crop into an APS-C mode and still retain a 4K image, which is really useful as it gives all of your lenses a bit of extra reach. Despite its tiny size, the camera comes with a great IBIS system, which comes in so useful when you're shooting photos in low light or just video in general. Unfortunately, this camera isn't perfect, and there's many things that I would love to see Sony address in future models, and a lot of that comes down to how you actually interact with and use the camera. I'm happy with the amount of dials and function buttons that this thing has, but the tools that you have to view and monitor your image when you're shooting it really lets this camera down. Sony are a massive electronics company. They make TVs, they make color accurate reference monitors, but they have put an awful screen onto this camera. It's like the screen in my Canon 700D, which is an entry-level DSLR from 2013. It's low resolution, it's not very bright, so it's quite hard to use it on a sunny day. The EVF also isn't much better, so there simply just is not a nice way to monitor your images on this camera. The small size of this camera just makes it amazing to pair with manual focus lenses, but the low quality of the screen and the EVF make it really hard to manual focus at wide apertures. Since this is a photography first camera, I would have loved for Sony to have included the tilting and flipping screen, which they've put in many of their other cameras. It's such a lovely quality of life improvement when you can keep your eye perfectly in line with the lens when you're shooting. It also would have been really nice if Sony included LUT support for JPEGs. While Sony do give you some options to customize the look of your JPEGs, it's incredibly limited when you compare it to manufacturers such as Fujifilm or Lumix. This camera is also unfortunately missing the joystick that you see on many other Sony cameras, as well as other smaller rangefinder style bodies such as Fujifilm's X100 line. This means that when you're moving your focus area around, you have to use the touchscreen instead of just being able to do it with your finger really quickly. Luckily, the autofocus on this camera is amazing. It's a Sony, so it's basically telepathic, but still it would be nice to have this individual control. The most important thing to consider when choosing a camera system is lenses and ergonomics and the ecosystem around it. Invest your money in that. The reason I bought into Sony as a manufacturer was because of the A7C line. I wanted a high resolution, full frame, interchangeable lens camera with a great lens ecosystem around it, so for me this was the obvious choice. It wasn't the romantic option, it wasn't the sexy option, it wasn't the flattering option, it was the tool that works for me. Creating the colours and the look of your image is not up to your camera or your colour science or whatever the advert tells you, it's up to you. No matter what camera I shot on, my images look the same. My edited files from Sony look the same as they do from Fuji. I was the limitation.